Alright guys, welcome back to the start of another project. So in this one we're going to be building a sled for an actual outdoor use. So this is going to be a Christmas present for my nephew. I'm actually going to be giving it to my sister as soon as we're done building it because it's already November, we've already got snow on the ground, and I'm sure my sister would actually like to get some use of it. Plus being able to use it for doing all those fun little family Christmas time events would be better than giving it to them at Christmas when they don't actually really get to use it anymore, because then we're into the hellish part of winter, which is January, February, and March. So I want to try and get this done as soon as possible. So I'm going to be following a set of plans for this that is actually completely free. There will be a link to them down in the description below. These actually come from the December 1990 edition of Popular Mechanics magazine, and it's actually really awesome that you can find this stuff for free. And so this sled is also a really nice design that works with the stock that I have. A lot of the sleds that I found when I was doing my research into them is they required steam bending to create the actual slides. And the problem is that I want to make this sled out of oak so it actually holds up outdoors for a long time. So I don't have the option to steam bend white oak. It's just not something that I can do here in Alberta. We don't have access to any air dried or even fresh white oak. I really wish I did, but I don't. So I would never have been able to make any of the other sleds that you can typically find plans for. So you guys can either go check out the plans to see what I'm talking about, or you can just kind of see as it comes together in this project video. But it's a really interesting design, and I overall am excited to get working on it. So in this video, we're going to start by just making our runners, the things that are actually going to sit on the ground and everything else is going to ride on. So the first thing we need to do is make a template, because we want both of these runners to come out being the exact same or as similar as they possibly can be. So I'm going to be making a template out of some 1/4-inch hardboard that we can then use on the router table to give us two hopefully identical runners that will then make this whole sled a little bit easier to build. So before we go into the video here, I want to let you guys know about my Patreon, where I offer 3 different tier levels. If you join that top tier, you get access to all of my SketchUp files and digital plans completely for free, as well as you get to be part of a monthly design session where you, me, and anyone else who is a part of that tier, you get to see some of the designs that I'm working on kind of before anyone else. And if you need help with the design or the project that you're working on, you've also got the opportunity there to ask questions, get help from me, get help from others. Basically, it's just a big opportunity for all of us to get together and just help each other out. So if you guys are interested, there will be a link in the card above as well as in the description down below. And I would really appreciate it if you guys would be willing to go check that out. So we have our piece of hardboard all sized up here. Now in most plans that you're gonna buy that are gonna have some of these kind of weird curved or just generally weirdly designed pieces, they're usually gonna come with some way for you to know how to actually lay out the part. So in the case of these plans, we're given kind of a combination between grid squares and different layout measurements in that, all referencing the overall size of this thing. So the first thing you wanna do when you're making your template, or if you're making just a one-of piece, you wanna start by just getting your piece to the size that will fit within the specifications of your grid or your measurements, all that kind of stuff. So very easily, just look at the measurements of this whole thing. I know that the length of it needs to be 30 inches, which is exactly what we have here. And then the width needs to be 6 inches. Again, I figured this out by counting the number of vertical squares on the grid areas here. And so now all we're gonna do is on our template piece, we're going to lay out all the same grid squares that are on the actual plans that we have. So on the back side here, we have a 4x3 grid. So we're gonna lay that out square by square on the actual back end of this piece here. In the middle area, we have some of these cutouts that are just meant to reduce the overall weight of this sled and the runner. So those are completely laid out using the measurements that are provided. And so this is gonna be one of the best parts about working with the hardboard, is because this is a super cheap material. You can buy a 4x8 sheet of this stuff for, I believe, 16 or 17 bucks at your local home store. So it's a super cheap material, and it's great if you wanna make more of these things in the future. But in this case, I'd much rather do all my layout and figuring out and roughing out my shape and all that, and just overall getting a nice finalized shape on this nice cheap material before I go into a piece of something like white oak. So we're gonna get our runner template all laid out here, and then we'll get on to actually shaping the template and getting it ready to actually transfer over to a piece of wood. So really quickly, I should mention that I've only made a few templates before. I'm not a professional at making these templates. So what I'm doing in this video is just sharing with you guys what I've learned off the internet and a few other sources in order to actually make this project. I'm not here to try and teach. We're just kind of learning these things together. I just have to verbalize it because that's honestly one of the ways that I learn best, is just by talking through these processes. So just keep that in mind as you watch through pretty much any of my videos. I am not a professional woodworker or anything like that. I am just someone who is learning to do, and I'm just kind of sharing what I'm learning as I go along. Oh yeah, picking up a set of French curves is going to make your life a hell of a lot easier when doing this. This is just a really cheap set from Lee Valley. I believe it was like 15 bucks. And all these are is just a whole bunch of different curves and shapes and that you just trace out in order to get all of the shapes that you need. So we have most of our template laid out. I didn't lay out this front hole just yet, just because we want the curvature of this hole to follow the curvature of our actual runner here. And the way it is right now, I don't have a good way of accurately transferring that curve. So I want to wait until I have the curve actually shaped. Then I can just use one of my combination squares set at 1 inch to then follow that nice curvature that we'll put in there. So we've got our template done. The last thing we want to do to it is just take a little bit of glue on your finger and just go over all of the edges. So we're just using some Type on 1, and I'm just going to rub this into all of the edges, and that'll just help harden up this hardboard. Because basically all hardboard is it's just it's kind of a in-between between cardboard and MDF. I don't know all the technicalities behind it, but it's not a very hard material, as the name may suggest. So you want to go in and just reinforce the edges with a little bit of glue, and that'll just harden up just the very edge. That way when we're running the router bit along it, there's less chance of it biting in or just overall damaging the shape of this whole template here. Once it's fully cured up, then we'll come back in and we're gonna make our actual runners using our template. Okay, so we now have our piece almost done. All we have to go through and do now is actually make it match the template, because right now all of our edges are very rough. There's nothing actually shaped here. Now, one option here would be that you could just use your template to transfer on your pencil marks and go through and do everything, you know, hand cut everything, then shape it with the sander, go through all that process. What we're gonna be doing instead to make it a little bit faster and overall a little bit easier is using a flush trim bit in the router. So when I was cutting out my material, I left anywhere from a 1/16 made to just under 1/8 of an inch. The idea here is that you want to remove as much material as you can with the jigsaw, bandsaw, whatever you're using, because that's going to put less strain and work on your more expensive router bits. Speaking of which, this is the router bit we're going to use. This is a compression flush trim bit, which means that it's an upcut and a downcut bit. So the blades kind of go in both directions. It's a really weird style, and it's only a 1/4 inch wide. So this is a fairly inexpensive one that I got off Amazon. It's Speed Tools. So I'll leave a link to this bit down in the description. I haven't gotten a chance to try yet, so I don't know if it's any good, but for 30 bucks, I think it'll be worthwhile. Plus the bearing that's on here is actually smoother than a lot of the other bits that I bought in the past. So there we go. We now have two identical runners in pretty much every way possible. These are as close replicas as I could possibly get. So we do still have some areas that we're going to have to do some cleanup on. There's a small area here where the jigsaw blade obviously tucked in a little bit more than I wanted it to. So that's just going to be a simple sanding job. We also had the router bite a little bit weird right on this inner area here, but that'll be super easy to clean up with some files and some sandpaper and that. But the most important part here is we now have two identical pieces that we can now base all of our other measurements and that off of. So it's going to make the project overall a lot easier knowing that these two pieces are completely identical. So this is definitely something that I need to get into more with the projects that I've been working on, even some of the furniture stuff. Making just a simple template out of some cheap hardboard is a really good way to work, because if your pieces are anything but perfectly square, you know, you have arches, curves, anything like that, or you just have openings like are on this piece here, making sure that all of these are the exact same between all your different pieces with a simple template is just so easy, and especially with that compression bit. By the way, that cheap compression bit off of Amazon did amazing. There's no tear out, no destruction of grain or anything on here, and there are areas where I was heavily going against the grain, so I'm very impressed by that compression bit from Amazon. So again, for 30 bucks, you can't really get much better than that. Yeah, so overall, super impressed by that. Anyway, that is going to do it for this video, guys. In the next video, we're going to start working on our internal structure, because right now we have two very nice runners, but it's not exactly a sled without something to support the actual child that's going to be sitting in it. And so that is what we're going to jump into in the next video. So anyways, guys, I do hope you enjoyed this video. It was a great opportunity to finally try out making a template that I was actually going to use in a project that I was going to show on camera. And I've never made a template that is kind of this complex before. So it was really good to just get some practice in and make something that is actually functional. And now I can just set this aside. And if I ever want to make a sled again, I already have the runner ready to go. So super awesome thing. Anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one.